Yes, good old TJ.
Konnichiwa, News Watch Boy INCOG. Back on our video, and today, guys, we're doing a video on OTAKUDAIKUN's channel yet again. This one, it is continuing on with the lore of the FateGrand Order series. This is episode 5, so this is London. So yeah, guys. So without further ado, this is a 28-minute video as well, so I'm probably not gonna be pausing. But anyway, let's subscribe on the video. Make sure you make sure you hit all when you hit the bell notification. Yeah, so pretty short, sweet, and simple. I know it's, like I say, it's a long video, so let's get right into this, guys. So play.
Who's ready to hang out in London with Mordred and Fran? If you want to support my content, become a patron or become a channel member. You'll gain access to my Lessons in Magecraft series, which has just released its 2nd episode, detailing true magic. Welcome back to OTAKUDAIKUN. Dai here. This is part 5 of my lore on FateGrand Order, where we'll be covering all there is to know about the 4th Singularity, London. Not only will I be recapping the events, but I'll be fleshing out important details in the world building and servants as we go. I'm assuming you've already watched my previous 4 videos in the series, so I'll only give a brief overview of what's happened for context. Basically, Chaldea is an organization trying to save humanity from incineration by resolving 7 singularities established by the demon god hivemind Getia. So far, Ritsuka and Mashu have recovered the grails of 4 other singularities, starting with 0 in Fuyuki. Then there's Orleans, Septum, and Okeanos. By now I'm sure you're getting the hang of this. Getia, using Solomon's dead corpse, sticks a holy grail into a period in time. A bunch of servants are summoned by that grail. Someone gets their hands on it and uses it to cause chaos, screwing with history, usually with the help of an individual demon god pillar.
Of course.
London is mostly the same. It's the 19th century, during the Industrial Revolution, a prime time to deviate from human history. Fake Solomon goes up to a mage of the era, Makiri Zolgan, and intimidates him. Yes, Makiri Zolgan is the same guy as Zokin Mato. When he was young, before the name change, Solomon finds him and convinces him that it's pointless trying to resist the incineration of humanity. Pansy-ass Zolgan's all like, well, if you can't beat him, join him, and decides to help, even going so far as to harbor the demon god Barbados. He teams up with 2 servants, Paracelsus von Hohenheim and Charles Babbage, to form Project Demonic Fog. Before that though, let's flesh these servants out, starting with Paracelsus. As you might expect from the name Hohenheim, this guy was a physician turned alchemist during the Renaissance period. In Fate, alchemy is but another extension of magecraft, and Paracelsus kinda pioneered that study by understanding the 5 main elements. Unlike other mages in the association, he was actually really kind and wanted to help people. He mass-produced magical items, such as jewels for public use, the pinnacle of which were Philosopher's Stones, crystals packed with mana. He wrote an educational tome he intended to release to the public. However, the Mages Association has a strict law of keeping magecraft a secret, so they sent out assassin enforcers to subdue him. In the conflict, however, they wound up killing him. Now that he's a caster heroic spirit, you'd think he'd ally himself with humanity, but perhaps due to the way he was summoned, he's unfortunately a villain this time. Babbage was also a great innovator, a mathematician who invented the world's first computers via steam-powered engines. I'm tempted to say he's the least fleshed out of all of Fate's servants. Basically, he dreamed of building technology to advance humanity's future, but died unable to fulfill that wish. His current form as a big honkin' steam robot is the materialization of that dream. Together, they plan to help Solomon bring destruction to England. Their first step is assaulting the clock tower, the headquarters of the Mages Association. They bust in through the front door, the British Museum, and level the place to the ground. They forge a tunnel beneath London's subway line.
I'm about to say,
Under
underneath
center of
the
city,
clock
Babbage
tower.
fulfills his dream of
I
a
got
steam
that stuff
world
down there for, like,
by building a massive steam engine called Angraboda.
Mages.
Zolgan implants the Grail into this engine, and through Babbage's noble phantasm, Dimension of Steam, the engine generates a dense fog that fills the streets above. This demonic fog is filled with such a high concentration of mana that it's effectively poisonous for humans, killing off 700,000 innocent people. Thus, all of London's survivors lock themselves inside their homes. To patrol the streets, Babbage employs mechanical minions called Helter-Skelters. From this Grail-powered fog, the Singularity's free servants begin to emerge. Zolgan, Babbage, and Paracelsus hope to bring these servants to their side, but aren't fully successful. One of their failed recruitments happens to be Mordred. We know all about Mordred. She's the homunculus child of Artoria, King Arthur, and her devious sister Morgan Le Fay. Morgan raised Mordred to be strong enough to infiltrate the Round Table and sabotage the king. Instead, however, Mordred found great respect for Artoria and served under her nobly. When Morgan revealed she was actually Artoria's child, an heir to the throne, she got all excited and sought her father's approval. Unfortunately, Artoria refused to acknowledge her, deeming her someone lacking the qualities necessary for a king. Sadly, Mordred takes this as rejection and seeks revenge. While Artoria is away on an expedition to Rome, Mordred breaks into the storehouse, steals her sword Clarend, and forms a rebellion. She battles with Artoria on the hills of Camlan, ultimately dying upon being pierced through with Rongominiad. Thus, she is the Knight of Betrayal, when more than anything, she just wanted approval. The way she sees it,
Why does she
London
do
is
that
a part
though?
of
Why would
Britain,
she think
her father's country?
that's
If
rejection
anyone's gonna
though?
bring destruction to London, it'll be her. Thus, Mordred fights against Project Demonic Fog, presumably to save London so she can mess it up later. Thanks to the distortions brought upon by all the fog, history is meddled with, causing certain historical figures, such as Victor Frankenstein and Dr. Henry Jekyll, who were historically dead at the time, to remain alive. Jekyll happens to be the same guy from the story Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or rather, the guy the novel was based on. He was a rich boy with a thorough education in medicine and civil law. Despite being a philanthropist, he harbored thoughts he considered evil, and became fascinated by them.
Why
this isn't
though?
surprising though, considering he encountered the Emperor of the criminal world, James Moriarty, during a joint investigation with Sherlock Holmes. To rid himself of his evil nature, Jekyll performed chemical experiments on himself. Instead of separating good from evil though, he wound up isolating an entirely new evil persona, Mr. Edward Hyde. As Hyde, he went
I
on
don't
a
think that
murder
was the
spree,
smartest thing to
prompting
do.
Jekyll to eventually kill himself. Naturally, with actual enemies to face, Jekyll has a use for his evil half, though he's still reluctant to use it. Fran, as we lovingly call her, is the artificial human created by Victor
Berserker.
Frankenstein. The religious fanatic wanted to recreate Adam and Eve, but got all freaked out by Fran's mannerisms and naivete. Victor berated, beat, and abused her, and she put up with it until eventually she discovered human emotions, namely loneliness. She wanted to fulfill her basic human function by having a mate and a lover, so she urged Victor to make another of her. Victor continually refused, and yet Fran persisted, chasing him wherever he fled. Eventually, Victor committed suicide, denying Fran her only wish. Unable to cope, she traveled north and burned herself to death upon a pyre. Hopefully, the altered history of the Singularity will treat her better. Mordred allies herself with Jekyll, deciding he'll be the brains to her brawn, and they begin their counteroffense. That is, when Mordred isn't ruining Jekyll's favorite couch by sleeping on it in full armor. Among these servants is poor little Jack the Lowly.
Jack the Ripper.
The famed serial killer who murdered women on the streets. Believe it or not, Jack the Ripper has at least two forms in the Nasuverse. One is a male version from Fate Strange Fake, bearing a closer resemblance to the murderer described in actual history. The other is Jack from Fate Apocrypha, whom I find more fascinating. Basically,
Yeah, I like
in the
the Jack from
Whitechapel
Apocrypha.
district in London
You know, I
during
mean,
the
I've seen the
19th
series, but
century,
I like it.
prostitution was rampant, and abortions were handled unethically. Fetuses were discarded into the rivers flowing through the city, and the souls of the dead children gathered to form a collection of wraiths. Collectively, they formed the shape of a single girl, who wandered the streets, killing women in a twisted way of trying to return to the womb. In grand order, she's much the same, naive and open to coercion. Thus, Paracelsus manages to manipulate Jack into killing people by suggesting they might be her mother. Needless to say, her condition is quite broken. Fearing abandonment and abuse, she continues to slay women foolish enough to leave their homes. To complicate matters, Jack has her own fog, which causes people to forget important details about her.
Yep.
Another third-wheel
That's
servant who the
life.
project manages to recruit is the freaky-ass clown Mephistopheles. If you've ever read or seen Goethe's play Faust, you'd know that Mephistopheles was a demon of temptation who tried to drag Georg Faust into depravity in a bet with God. In Fate, however, Mephistopheles was a homunculus created by Faust, who happened to be an alchemist and astrologer. Using techniques ahead of his time, he constructed Mephistopheles to act as his servant, but negligently gifted the homunculus with a strong ego that, over time, grew twisted. Faust's own creation turned on and murdered him. Normally, Mephistopheles
It
isn't
be
the
your
kind of
own
person to
kind,
follow
man. It be your
orders,
own
but
people
winds up
that you make,
cooperating
man.
with Zolgan because it gives him the chance to murder innocent people. While all this madness is going down, Chaldea prepares to ray-shift Ritsuka and Mashu for investigation. Dr. Roman is excited about meeting the genuine Sherlock Holmes, but Mashu chides him, saying that fictional characters like Sherlock can't be servants. What little she knows. When they arrive
That
in
laugh,
London,
though.
Mashu
That's that
worries
evil,
that the mana
evil
poison
person
fog
laugh.
will harm Ritsuka. Strangely enough, it doesn't. Dr. Roman speculates that, due to their master-servant bond, Ritsuka is inheriting some kind of poison-resistant skill from Mashu. This is hella convenient. Right off the bat, we meet Mordred. She confirms we aren't enemies, warns us to be careful in the fog, and then leaves. With no leads of our own, we decide to follow her and beat up some homunculi into helter-skelter patrolling the streets. Mashu notices that the helter-skelter's metal is decaying due to sulfuric acid in the air. This is from Jack's noble phantasm, and she tries to sneak up on Mashu for a killing strike before Ritsuka warns her. After we beat Jack and chase her away, Mordred
that happen
comes
in
back
Apocrypha?
and expresses how impressed she was with
Oh,
our
wait, no,
fighting.
actually, Masha was
As a
in
token
that.
of friendship, she takes us back to the apartment she lives in with Jekyll. Conveniently, the apartment is also above a magic ley line, so we set up a summoning circle. Before long, we team up with Mordred and Jekyll, earning their help in retrieving the Grail. To secure the safety of Jekyll's ally, Victor Frankenstein, we venture into the fog in search of Victor's mansion. Sadly, by the time we get there, the building is mostly destroyed. Mephistopheles got to Victor and murdered him for refusing to join Project Demonic Fog. We don't take kindly to his kind around these parts. Whoops, wrong singularity. Long story short, Mordred slices and dices the clown into oblivion. From the wreckage of Victor's home, we find Fran. Again, she's the real Fran of that era, not a heroic spirit. Back at the apartment, Jekyll is astonished by how Mashu, and more particularly Mordred, are able to understand the gist of Fran's grunts. He suggests it might be because they're all women, which almost gets him killed by Mordred. Next, Ritsuka,
Yes, I'm
Mashu, and
doing
Mordred
it.
are sent out to investigate a report about a magical tomb running amok in Soho. Along the way, Mordred takes issue with how Mashu is devaluing herself for being just a demi-servant. To try and motivate Mashu, Mordred forces her into a sparring match. This chases Mashu's hesitation away, for the moment. We reach a bookstore and find that Jekyll's informant is actually Hans Christian Andersen.
Who the heck is this?
In life, he was an aspiring actor and poet who struggled to be acknowledged, suffering violence, misfortune, and poverty. It wasn't until the age of 30 that he became famous writing children's fairy tales. Due to his life's hardships, however, a great deal of darkness and agony flowed into his works, such as The Little Mermaid and The Ugly Duckling.
Oh,
Poor
so
guy
he
lived
made
his
them
entire life a
stories.
virgin, dying at the age of 70 from liver cancer. His most prized possession was a letter from his first love. Sounds gentle, until you see him in his foul mouth as a servant. The dude's hilariously egotistical and defensive. When Hans introduces himself, Mashu is excited, mentioning her fondness for fairy tales. This is sweet and meaningful when you consider it was Roman who used to bring her books while in quarantine. Right off the bat, we can see Hans getting into trouble, telling Mordred her head must be made of mashed potatoes. Either way, Hans explains that the
Good boy
magical
got a
tool
death
they're
wish.
looking for is actually just
Well,
upstairs,
Hans crazy.
but he refuses to follow. Yeah, he doesn't do combat. Mashu and Mordred manage to lure the book out into the street for a fight, only to realize they can't properly strike it. This is because the book lacks a tangible form. Hans decides to help out by giving the book a name, Nursery Rhyme. This transforms the book into a cute little girl in black who cries wondering where her master, Alice, is. Now, admittedly,
Alice
Nursery
in
Rhyme
Wonderland?
makes more sense in the context of Fate Extra. She's literally the general embodiment of all nursery rhymes, and was summoned by her master Alice, a poor girl who was gravely injured and experimented on. Alice died and became a cyber ghost, and the servant Nursery Rhyme took on her name, form, and personality. In grand order, perhaps because this is a multiverse, Nursery Rhyme still looks and acts like Alice from vague memories of a parallel world. Unfortunately, these guys don't know all of that about her. To them, she's a threat. In order to halt her rampage, Ritsuka's party eliminates her. Before returning to the apartment, Ritsuka invites Hans to come with them. He's reluctant, until Mordred tries to persuade Ritsuka against it. Just despite the treacherous night, Hans returns with us. Jack the Ripper's at it again, this time attacking Scotland Yard. They're all dead by the time we arrive. Turns out she's doing Paracelsus's bidding. He tells her who might be her mother, and she naively attacks them. Naturally, he sicks Jack on us, and we strike her down. It's a shame. If only we didn't have to be enemies. Paracelsus, presumably with the Grail's help, teleports out of there. Back at the apartment, Anderson explains that if servants are being born from the fog, that means the fog is powered by the Holy Grail, and it's possible more free servants will emerge. Thus, we take to the streets patrolling, and are nearby when William Shakespeare appears. Shakespeare is as straightforward as a servant gets, perhaps the most tame of all legends.
Always.
He was, of course, the famous playwright responsible for writing comedies and tragedies, best known for works
Romeo
like
and
Macbeth,
Juliet, right?
Hamlet, and Romeo and Juliet. He's far less warrior and more creative genius, with his storytelling being his main form of fighting as a servant. Essentially, he can make true the workings of his own imagination, as well as tell the stories of other servants, forcing them to confront their often tragic pasts. He's surprisingly useful. Just don't put him in charge of writing a happy ending. Paracelsus shows up late to try and recruit Shakespeare, but is denied. Instead of getting what he wants, we off him. This freaks out the other members of Project Demonic Fog, and Babbage begins releasing more and more helter-skelters. As we figure out our next move, Anderson and Shakespeare convene in the other room, sheltering themselves like hermits. Anderson suggests that, even though the clock tower was destroyed, there must be some kind of hidden records remaining. We venture out again to Regent Park and begin digging underground. Beneath the surface, we find the underground sections of the clock tower and are attacked by Grimoire. After fighting them, Anderson and Shakespeare reluctantly admit that they feel liberated burning books. Oof. Deeper in, Anderson finds the books he's looking for, but isn't allowed to take them out of the room due to a protective spell. Thus, we need to hold off enemies while he reads. Thankfully, the documents he's digging through are already organized for him. This is because Sherlock Holmes, who we don't see until much later, has been looking into the mystery of humanity's incineration on his own in secret. Regardless, Ritsuka's servants are running out of mana and can't stall much longer. Jekyll takes this chance to inject himself with an elixir, turning into Mr. Hyde to enter the fray. Thanks to him, Anderson acquires his knowledge when he returned to the apartment. What he discovered from the archives is something we viewers already know, at least if you've been keeping up with my Fate videos. He learns that, while servants were summoned for the Holy Grail War, that wasn't their original purpose. Prior, the Throne of Heroes recorded the legends of humanity's strongest warriors, not to be used by other mages, but to be summoned to fight a common enemy. The heroic spirit system is meant to be used by the counterforce. Dr. Roman and Da Vinci figure out that the Helter-Skelters are a kind of noble phantasm, machines imbued with mana. That means we can stop them by stopping the servant they belong to. We need to find a way to trace their magical energy back to the source. When everyone is stumped as to how to do that, Fran steps up and is able to detect such traces of mana. Noise.
Nice.
Mashu is discouraged because her noble phantasm still isn't up to full power. If only she knew her servant were Galahad. Mordred gives her a great pep talk. She explains that while Mashu isn't at her full strength, neither is Ritsuka. They're perfect for each other and will grow together. Fran leads us to a helter-skelter that is controlling the others. After destroying it, we find that it has its creator, Charles Babbage, listed on it. Apparently, he and Victor were acquaintances. Normally, Babbage isn't supposed to be alive in this era, but at this point, they don't realize Babbage is a servant. The Helter-Skelters
So they don't even know
active
up to
again
this point
with
that
a
he.
new
Oh,
remote
okay.
control unit, so we're out to look for them all
But
over
they knew.
again. This time, however, Fran is intentionally misleading us. She can trace the Helter-Skelters because she knows Babbage, but doesn't believe he'd be doing something as awful as causing the fog. The team reasons Babbage is being forced to comply, which motivates Fran to get to the bottom of things. In the city's center, we meet Babbage as a heroic spirit. Unlike Victor, Babbage cares about Fran. When he tries to befriend her, the Grail, controlled by Zolgan, forces him to fight. In his defeat, he explains that to stop the fog, they must go deep beneath the center of the city and destroy his massive steam engine Angrboda. He expresses his desire not to harm Fran's world before dispersing. We go beneath Londinium's subway system through secret tunnels. When we reach Angrboda, we discover Makiri Zolgan. Makiri's plan is simple enough. He wants to summon a servant capable of activating the fog and allowing it to consume all of England. We try to stop him from the summoning ritual, but he turns into the demon god pillar Barbados. Even after the fight, Makiri still tries the summoning ritual as Mordred slays him.
That's where
Thus,
Barbados comes
as he
from.
dies, Zolgan manages to finish the spell, summoning none other than Nikola Tesla. Underwhelming, to say the least. Tesla's honestly more legend than substance. In life, he was an engineer and inventor who brought electrical power to the world through the design of alternating current. Because of that, he became a figure associated with lightning, embellished by the world as the man who revealed the power of Zeus's thunder. We can thank authors like Mark Twain for labeling him Professor Thunder and Lightning. Even though Tesla is alive in this time period, his servant form is completely different. A damn electric supervillain. Zolgan's incantations summoned Tesla with a bias, making
Tesla
him
all
act against his
electricity.
will as a kind of madness enhancement. We chase Tesla through the tunnels, but he can use the fog to absorb mana and electrocute folks. Mordred clears the fog by having it absorb the energy from her Clarent Blood Arthur, but Tesla escapes. Tesla plans to go to the skies of Buckingham Palace and use his lightning to activate the fog. That said, he's still a good guy being forced to do evil, so there's some leeway as he pleads Ritsuka's team to defeat him. He forms a staircase to the densest part of the fog, but from that fog, Kintoki and Tamamo get summoned. Sakata Kintoki was the child of Raijin the Red Dragon and an ogress witch. As a child, his mother was killed by a traveling warrior, and he was brought before Minamoto no Yorimitsu to become one of the 4 heavenly kings, samurai which served Yorimitsu during the Heian period. He is most famous for the time he hunted the Oni Shutendoji, drugging her alcohol and striking her down. He was conflicted for also having fallen in love with Shutendoji, and had to live with the fact that he killed her. Tamamo no Mae was, essentially, a descendant goddess of Kami Amaterasu. Hoping to understand her human worshippers, she cast aside her divinity to live as immortal, and
Why,
fell in
though?
love with Emperor Toba. She served under him, trying to hide her identity as a 9-tailed fox. When her secret was discovered, and the Emperor took ill, priests accused her of bewitching him. Tamamo fled the scene, only to be struck down by a volley of arrows, the killing blow being from an enchanted arrow. Her corpse later became the Seshoseki, or Killing Stone, which cursed and poisoned locals until being shattered by a monk. Similar to Alice, Tamamo's dialogue appears to infer that she remembers having a previous
Just want to know
master,
why she go from
which very well could
divinity
be
to
Hakuno
want to be
Kishinami
immortal.
from Fate Extra. Unlike Tesla, Kintoki is able to resist being controlled, and actually winds up helping. When Tamamo appears, she's disappointed that she cannot experience the wonderful cuisine of London. Kintoki and Tamamo give their all to disperse the fog, allowing Ritsuka's team a chance to confront Tesla on fairer terms. Along his stairs, he tries to invoke his noble phantasm, but is done in by Clarend. Now that we've defeated Tesla, it seems we still need to get the Grail from Angraboda. With the fog still there, it conjures one final servant,
Lancer
Artoria Alter. Artoria, naturally, is King Arthur of Britain. Her Lancer variant, with the large bust, is the result of her choosing to cling to the spear Rongominyad, using it.
I didn't know Artoria had a Lancer form.
A side effect of wielding the spear is that she slowly gets turned into the goddess Rongominyad. In order to avoid this, Artoria cast away her benevolence to remain human, with the consequence of becoming a black
huge
tyrant,
personality.
king of storms.
Very
Basically,
huge
she is an
personality in
alter
front of her.
version of the original Lancer Artoria. Similar to Tesla, this servant is affected by the Madness Enhancement. Mordred fully armors up to take on this twisted version of her father, and manages to win. With no more enemies, we go to retrieve the Grail from Angraboda, and say farewell to Mordred before the singularity vanishes. Mashu assures Mordred that Artoria's rage wasn't out of hatred for her. Everyone's in good spirits, until another anomaly is detected. Incoming, the demon god hive mind Getia appears in the form of Solomon. He mocks Chaldea, claiming the only reason it hasn't died out yet is because it's been removed from the temporal axis. He boasts of his strength, and of the rain in the sky being his noble phantasm. Ars Almadel Solomonis. In combat, we get our asses handed to us. He attributes this to the fact that Chaldea's servants are all ordinary, and not the ones chosen by the counterforce, the Grand Servants, meant to take on beasts, and declares that he is the Grand Caster. He's so egotistical that he doesn't intend to kill us here. We're apparently not even worth his time. This Solomon explains how humanity is doomed.
That creepy look, though.
That incineration is actually the best solution. Of course, he won't tell us that he's trying to build a superior humanity without the concept of death. I don't know. I feel like that's pretty important, don't you? So yeah, even though we retrieved the Grail, it's bittersweet since our main enemy hardly even recognizes our efforts. Even though our enemy is strong, we have no choice but to pick ourselves up and keep fighting.
I'll try again.
As we prepare for the idea of another singularity, Mashu worries that there may be truth to Solomon's criticism of humanity. That won't stop us, though. Next time, we head out to a completely different era. America. The land of the... Wait, Celtics? Something's wrong here. I'll see you later.
Wait, so we heading to where I'm at, America? Episode 6, part 6. Excuse me, okay. So, like I say, Laura, FateGrand, Order 5, London. Like, subscribe to the video, guys. Hit the bell notification, maybe click all. So you know if I make a future upload. And yeah, guys, so, boy, INCOG, I'm out. Here, wow.